It counts as a disability where a video game like Elden Ring is concerned if you have a kid. You have a 2-year-old, you're trying to play Elden Ring, you can't pause.
Alright, well, I heard quite a lot of bad takes on Elden Ring, but this one has to take the cake. Now, children are supposed to be considered a temporary disability according to game developer Alana Pierce. Now, I'm not going to lie, in this video, she had great points, she had good suggestions, but she also had some terrible takes, such as this one. So without further ado, let's get started.
It's been brought up various times across various mediums by various people that Elden Ring is not, or FromSoft games in general, are not particularly accessible to disabled players. And people are asking for accessibility are not actually asking for an easy mode. That isn't the intent. Here's the thing I want to spell out where accessibility is concerned. People who are disabled, I felt myself doing it, I'm going to do it, is another tangent. There are also multiple kinds of disabilities, especially where gaming is concerned. There are long-term disabilities, there are situational disabilities, there are temporary disabilities. It counts as a disability where a video game like Elden Ring is concerned if you have a kid. You have a 2-year-old, you're trying to play Elden Ring, you can't pause.
So apparently she doesn't have kids, but let's say she did. Imagine your kid grows up, sees this video on the internet, and you're like, yeah, at that time you were a disability. Now let's analyze this for a second, because I do understand where she's coming from, but it is just so poorly worded and it doesn't apply to Elden Ring. Let me give you an example. When I had my first daughter, I was playing a lot of Smite, which is a MOBA. And in that game, if you take 1 or 2 minutes off, then you are falling behind. Your team is going to be so pissed off at you because there is no way to pause and it's an active multiplayer session. So if you take 2 minutes to go change a diaper, yeah, you're probably going to lose. But that's just the responsibility of being a father or a mother. You have to plan ahead. And if the baby's crying, go change the diaper. The video game isn't that important. But with Elden Ring, it applies even less because it's not a constant ongoing multiplayer game. Yeah, you might be doing an invasion, but if you die, who cares? You're not losing anything of value, or you might be in the middle of a boss fight. And if you die, once again, who cares? Go back and fight the boss. There's not a real loss of significant amount of time by taking 2 minutes away from your game to go change a baby's diaper. For example, in a MOBA, you could be 30 minutes in and then you lose one big fight at the end. Well, you just wasted 30 minutes. But it doesn't apply to Elden Ring. And even in the case of a MOBA, who fucking cares? It's a game, you have bigger responsibilities. So yeah, this is one of the most brain dead takes I have ever seen, but let's keep listening.
It is a situational disability that you have, where the game not having the option for you to be able to pause, for example, is a hindrance for your particular disability, a situational disability. You may need to pause to stop your kid from putting a fork into a socket, a power outlet.
Well, I do hope she never has children, and she has said that in the past that she doesn't want any. Because if your kid is about to electrocute himself and your thought is, okay, let me pause the game, there's something wrong with you. You shouldn't even be wasting a millisecond pressing on the pause button. You should be throwing your controller as far as possible and jumping to the rescue of your kid that's about to get electrocuted. But once again, priorities, right?
Temporary disabilities. You break your wrist, you sprain your wrist, you temporarily have trouble playing video games. You would need something to help you press certain buttons if you're playing Elden Ring. The third one, long-term, people who have long-term disabilities. That I do. I have tendonitis in both of my wrists from playing too many video games. Unironically, that is a thing, from tapping too much. That means any rapid button mashing in any game, I'm going to have a lot of trouble with unless there are accessibility options to prevent that.
Okay, well, we know that doesn't apply to Elden Ring because you don't need to mash buttons. It's very deliberate, one click for one attack. It's not like a God of War action sequence like they used to have in the old games and even some of the new games, but I do think there's options to prevent that. So yeah, once again, doesn't apply to Elden Ring.
Is also appealing to people with disabilities. They too want to play the extremely hard game that is very hard for them to beat. They're not asking you to give them an easy mode and make it easy for them to get through. They're asking for a version of the game that can be played with their particular disabilities. So they can still enjoy really hard games as well. The complications with this conversation arise, I think, with Elden Ring specifically. Like, yeah, there are so many people who just dismiss it as like, shut up, who cares about you, you're disabled, which, fuck off. Second, people just assuming they're asking for easy mode, and that's not the case. It's not an easy, it's not even less difficulty, it's more options. But third is the unique challenge with FromSoft games of completing them being such a point of pride. They intentionally make these games difficult. Like I already said, this is an established ethos of these games. They are intentionally very difficult. Elden Ring is the broadest, the most open. You can use summons if you want to. If you want it to be harder, you don't have to. You can approach it with as much or as little assistance as you want, and you have still completed the game. Controversial, I know, but yes, if you use summons, you've still finished the game. I don't care how you play it. Do whatever you want.
So this is what I find interesting about this video. It's that she understands the concept of From Software games. She totally gets it. She gets it that the difficulty is the game. It is part of the identity and the core purpose of the game and how good you feel after beating a difficult boss. So what is she asking for exactly? Because there's already a lot of accessibility options for people that aren't that good at Souls-likes. For example, summons or even summoning other players. So what else are you asking for exactly? Because I've seen people like DSP beat a couple bosses, and that guy is extremely disabled. He hasn't had a functioning brain for years. So what else do you want here? There's so many options in the game already. Let's keep watching.
For every game that you finish, but especially for FromSoft games, there were an ending title screen that you could screenshot and you could share very easily that details exactly how you finish the game. Are people going to reply to each other who share that and be toxic about it? Yeah, people are going to be like, oh, you use summons, you died, and beat you summons, I beat the game. Yeah, people are going to be dicks. But I feel like it would maybe prevent some of the extra accessibility specific gatekeeping. Like all of these people who are vehemently against accessibility options, which is really, again, just in-game customization options. No one's asking for less or more damage, but like less button presses or there's a large
So she's kind of dancing around the pot, but now she actually took her mask off. This is what she's asking for. Less button presses. Do you want the game to play itself for you at this point? I mean, for Elden Ring, you press one button for one action. They're not asking you to button mash the X just to lift a rock like in God of War. And don't get me wrong, I love God of War. I'm not throwing a jab at it. But what else do you want here? If you take the action away from just one button press, then what is it going to be? You press the button once and then your character does perfect dodges and avoid all of the boss's moves? What you're asking for, it's just not reasonable.
List of things that can make it easier for disabled players to play a really hard game and still have it feel really hard, but still be able to play it, But what if you get just a screen at the end with the credits that shows exactly how you played it or what options you had on or off? In my head, this would alleviate a lot of that discourse. People are saying like no accessibility whatsoever because I want to be able to play Elden Ring the exact way that I want to be able to play it. And I feel like those people are shooting themselves in the foot because what if they get one of those temporary, situational, or short-term disabilities? You break your wrist, you're not going to be able to play Elden Ring. You have a kid, suddenly you can't play Elden Ring. Like, I feel like they say it when they don't have disabilities, but in 10 years, when you do have some kind of disability, I feel like you're going to retroactively kind of regret that you were like, absolutely not.
Once again, referring to kids as a disability is just sick. That's just ridiculous. I'll give her a pass because she doesn't have children. But yeah, kids are a blessing. They're not a disability. And I've played video games when I had babies and I was changing diapers. You just have to plan your shit properly. Maybe when the kids are sleeping, then you can play Elden Ring, or when they're awake, you play something else. Maybe a single player game that you can pause. You have more important fish to fry anyways. You should be taking care of your kids and not focusing on video games. But as for her suggestion of having a screen at the end that details how you beat the game, I think that's a great idea. Because, for example, I just beat the entire DLC with no summons except for the final boss. And if there was a little something you get at the end, whether a screenshot or even an in-game item that has no purpose that you only get if you don't use summons, then I would have pulled through and I wouldn't have summoned. But I just wanted to beat him. He was really, really hard. Anyways, I think she wants to add this screen at the end of the game just so she can add more features that dumb down the experience. For example, less buttons to press. I would understand maybe in a Mortal Kombat game, but this is Elden Ring. There's barely any extra buttons to press besides the move you want to do. Or maybe when you're looking for a spell, you have to mash a couple times, but maybe that's what, 5 or 6 times? That shouldn't be too hard or even comparable to what you have to do in a God of War game or Mortal Kombat. So once again, this was a very journalistic take from a non-journalist. It's very strange. Maybe the brain rot is spreading more than we thought, but let me know what you think about this in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.